Welcome to my studio. I'm Regina Quinn, and I'd like to share with you the process that I use to create weeping crab. We had several early spring snowstorms, and I was heartbroken to find that one of the main branches of our beautiful weeping crab had broken off the tree. So I brought the branch into my studio, studied it closely, and I created sketches using inks and bamboo skewers. Then, as I was ready to start the actual piece, I applied washes of watercolor and then coated with encaustic, which is beeswax and juror resin, into which I scrape and scratch and carve. So here's the panel with watercolor, coated with several layers of encaustic medium, which is clear. Then I scratched in a line to define the edge of the snow. And meanwhile, I melted some pale colors of encaustic, and I brushed those on to give a sense of layers of snow. I mixed the paints with a lot of encaustic medium, so it's still pretty transparent and you can see the watercolors underlying. I scraped the surface with a razor blade to smooth it, and then I heat it with a hot air gun that fuses the layers of the wax. So you have to fuse each layer so that the wax connects and doesn't flake off. So I keep layering and smoothing, scratching, and fusing. I do that process of building layers of wax and smoothing, scraping, and scratching into it, and fusing it with the heat gun over and over and over again. Now the piece is ready for me to begin to scratch in the branches. So I set the branches hanging from a curtain rod that's right above my encaustic workstation. And I did some very rough sketching to just work out the point at which I want the branches to start from the top edge of the painting. I use a variety of sharp tools, many of which are used in ceramics, but work really well on the encaustic surface. Now I'm going back in with this pen tool to deepen the groove and to define it. And this gets the wax ready for the next layer, where I'm applying the color for the main branches, and it goes into the incision, but it's hot wax, and you can see it goes outside of the incisions as well. But the important thing is to fill, because later I can scrape away the excess. Once the wax cools, it hardens, and I can take a razor blade and go across the surface of the painting, and you can see it picks up some of the wax that's outside of the incision. So I just do it gently. I go over it and over it, And you start to see that the incised line is revealed and the excess paint is gone. So once I'm finished establishing the main branches, and I've scraped away the excess, I go over it with a heat gun, and that fuses all of the wax layers so far together. Then to do the finer branches that are almost like hairs, I went back in with a pin tool and other very sharp tools and just scratch the surface. So I'm not really incising, I'm just barely scratching into the surface, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch or maybe even less. As I'm doing this scratching, I have the tree branch right there above me, and I can keep referring back to it to look at the patterns of branching to help inform the way I drag the pin tool across the surface of the encaustic. For these fine lines, instead of filling with encaustic, I'm just going to cover the surface with beeswax mixed with linseed oil and these oil pigment sticks by R&F Paint. They're basically just beeswax, linseed oil, and pigment. So they're really beautiful, really pure, and they work beautifully over the encaustic. I create a variety of brown tones using some actual browns and also mixing complementary colors like this Indian yellow and violet. Once I have gotten the colors I'd like, I take the beeswax medium and just rub it on the surface because it makes the paints go on so smoothly and kind of nice and thin. Then I'm just taking kind of globs of the oil paints that are mixed with the beeswax and rub it across the surface. I just want the residue that has gotten into the scratches to remain. So I go over the surface with a paper towel, clean it up with a pin tool, go back over it a couple of times so the lines are beautifully defined. And I go back over again with the heat gun to get all of the wax fused together. I did a few light finishing touches, including some white encaustics to give that sense of snow on the branches of the weeping crab.